Hi, it's Ray from Proshaper Workshop in Charlton, Massachusetts, and we're back on this 37 Studebaker fender. We made it out of 20 gauge. It's just a teaching example of how you can make this all from English wheeling. There was no malleting on this, there was no shrinking, it was all stretching. And then if we had taken and gone all the way over to the edge, we probably would be too thin in here. So we decided to put this little strip in, and that allowed us to make the entire fender without doing the shrinking. So we welded it up. We did a little experiment with welding. We used the inexpensive Chinese TIG welder, the $300 TIG welder, and I have to admit the TIG welder weld was much better than the MIG weld. We used the little $450 or whatever Lincoln MIG welder, and I noticed today there was a little bit of a depression up here, and I worked it out a little bit before we went on camera, and I beat it up a little bit and it cracked. So it got a little thin there or whatever, and the metal's fatigued and it cracked. I could chase that out and fix it. It's not the end of the world. But this is just a throwaway panel anyways. My intent was just to show what you can do with the English wheel, and it was aimed at people that are just starting to learn the English wheel techniques. And what we hope to do next, we're going to stay on the same series, is that we'll make this exact same panel, but we're going to make it all the way from here to here, and we'll use shrinking and stretching in the middle and shrinking on the edges, and then we'll be able to compare the two results, the welded one versus the shrunk one. So I call that the two poison pills. If you make a panel with just stretching, that means you're going to have to do a lot of welding. If you make a panel that is going to encompass more of the shape, then you're going to have to do a lot of shrinking. So people are afraid to do shrinking, and people are afraid to do welding. You really shouldn't be afraid of anyone. People are afraid of shrinking because they really haven't mastered it yet, but it's very simple. And a lot of people are afraid of welding, and they opt for the MIG welder versus the TIG welder. And what I've tried to show in this one is that TIG welder is not a financial hurdle to get over, because you can buy an inexpensive TIG welder. As I probably mentioned before, you can get one that'll do both aluminum and steel for as little as $600, maybe even less. Steel only, there's one in my Amazon store now we have in there. It's $197, and the one we used for this one was a $300 one, but that was like 3 years ago, so they've actually lowered the price on them. So what we're going to do on this fender now is we're going to mark it so that we can trim this. We'll mark it and trim this at even, and we're going to tip this flange, and cut this off and cut that off. After we get that done, then we'll cut this fender in half, and we're going to mic it up to see what the thickness of the metal is right here. This is where the most stretching took place, about right at this point here. So next thing I'm going to do is going to mark it all up, get it marked with a magic marker, translate that into blue vinyl tape, the 1/8 inch tape that I like to do for any type of marking or cutting. We'll come back with it all trimmed up. Alright, we got this done, got it all marked and cut, and now we're going to tip this edge, this bottom flange. We'll do this one first, then we'll tip the wide edge. That's what I like about the blue tape. You can really see the line really good. So what's going to happen here now is, see how that's going to pucker up? That's going to need a shrink. So we're going to have to bring it over to the shrinker. We'll give one more tip. This is engaged, just lightly engaged into this soft polyurethane wheel. And then that's the fulcrum, and my arm up here is the lever. So if I pull it up more, I get more of a tip. This is where it's balking a little bit because it's got that extra material. I suppose we could run it through here too while we're here. When we do a wired edge, we're going to put a 1/8 inch wire in. I'm a little short. I'm hurrying like crazy because Mark's got to leave, and we're trying to get this video done. I'm supposed to have 3/8 of an inch there, and a little bit less than 3/8 is okay, but I'm a little less than that probably. Now, if you don't have a tipping wheel, then you can use just a pair of vice grips. You can modify the vice grips, and they'll do a little bit better job. Grind off the jaws of the vice grip, or weld in a little, some little flat jaws to it. Yeah, that's pretty short right there. It's almost a little bit more than 1/4, so I'm going to be a little short here, but it's just to get the idea across. This is not a panel that we're going to use. It's purely a demonstration panel. So maybe I'll come in a little bit on the blue tape so I get some more flange here. Yeah, that's good enough. So now let's shrink this up. We'll go over to the shrinker. Alright, so when you do use a shrinker, you only want to bite in on that edge, that flange, about halfway or so. It doesn't do any good to go all the way in. In fact, it makes it worse. Most of the shrinking has to happen at the edge. That's why we're only going in a little bit. These are stipple jaws in here. And I probably should switch to my other shrinker, because this is biting on the outside edges. Just like an English wheel roller, shrinker dies, if they're not relieved on the outer edges, will bite a little bit. So. But this is just a flange, and maybe we'll just continue on here. So that's got to come around. So now we've shrunk it a little bit, now we bring it back up a little bit. Do 2 passes. And we'll go back to the shrinker. This is generally the only time I use my shrinker stretcher is on edge flange work like this. Straighten the flange out to where you want it to be. Now this is a little inconvenient or in the way here because I don't have a good throw. Let me switch to my shrinker. So this is why I made this shrinker, so that I could have a little more user-friendly tool. So I made these here, and I get a good kick on it now. Alright, now we'll get the slapper and a dolly and bring that up to 90 degrees. Alright, you always want to remember to have a blanket on your bench so it doesn't scratch up the panel. You want to keep your panel in nice shape. This is that dolly I use quite a bit for edge work. And it's got a nice round and a sharp point there. I can fulcrum off of that. This is my lever, that's the fulcrum. Now as I knock this over, the bend comes out, then we'll have to throw it in the shrinker again. You can follow that blue line really nicely. That's good enough for now. That's going to be below. The running board is going to be here. There'll be several bolt holes through here, and then that just stiffens up that bottom of the fender. Let's see if we can knock this over. Maybe I'll use the hammer on this one. Now, if you're making this fender in sections, oftentimes I will do all this tipping and edge work and everything in each segment, because if you try to do it all together, it gets really unwieldy. So I wouldn't wire this edge, but I'd get it up to 90 here. So we got to get it up to 90 to wire it. And maybe I'll just wire just a little bit here to show you how you can put that wire right in there very easily. I'm a little short on material here, so I'm going to probably encroach a little here. Like I said, this is just a quickie panel for demonstration purposes. I'll put that quickly back on the buck and see what we have to do. This can be shrunk or stretched, but by the time you roll it over, it all comes out in the wash anyways, but this has to be shrunk in order to fit. We'll see this on the buck over here. So this will need to be stretched a little, because you can see it's all crowded and bunched up right now. You can see that right there. If you stretch this edge out, then it'll fit right on the buck. But I want to watch that bottom one. Actually, I got the bottom one pretty close, just by guesstimating. I got to come around. I got to come around a little bit more here, and then we'll put the stretch die in and stretch this out a little bit, and then we'll maybe put a little bit of the wire in. But the main purpose of this is we want to cut this in half and then measure it with a micrometer. Now, oftentimes you'll have a problem, like now I have a problem here, is that if I try to put that in, it's hitting right there. I can't put it in this way. Now on the smaller Lancaster type shrinkers, I can't put it in that one either, but I can get it in this way. So sometimes there's an advantage to the smaller shrinkers, and this would be a case. But I have a solution. Urco probably has about 12 different die sets for these machines. I use Urco dies in my machine, and this is called a channel die, and that's for a 1-inch C channel, but it's also great for a conflict like that where you're starting to hit. So, but these are an expensive solution, but if you're in the professional realm, you really kind of need them. That comes in at a 45-degree angle now. Now that brings me way out here, so I don't have a problem getting that flange in with there's no bumping with the machine anymore, no conflict. So I'm just guesstimating here how much I gotta go. If I'd made a quick cardboard template, I'd be dialed in perfectly, but again, we're rushing. So let me put the stretch dies in and see if I can stretch that out. Let's see, can I get in there? I might be able to. Oh, let's stretch this flange out just a little now. And that should allow that to go back on. Looks like we'll get in there. Alright, we'll try that. Okay. So that looks pretty good. It could be dialed in a little bit more. I'm just rushing, like I said. Let me do a little bit of the wired edge. I'll get a piece of 1/8 inch wire and I'll show you how that rolls right over. We use 1/8 inch wire. It's cold rolled wire. What you want to do is bend it so it fits in there nicely. It's got to be in there really nice. So you have to take the time to bend it properly. This one's a pretty easy one. It's just on one plane, so it's not too bad. And these little Harbor Freight mini vice grips work really good to hold that in there. They're a pain to get adjusted properly though. There we go. Get another one over here. I'm just going to do a little section of it here. So we're at 90 degrees. We got to roll it right around the wire. I took the door skinning hammer and I radiused it out so I don't get any hammer bites. Remember I mentioned the shrinker bites, the English wheel roller bites, hammer bites, all the same game. You just take your time and it'll slowly roll over. I got a better dolly that'll reach in there. Let me get that one. So I made this dolly and I relieved it here and it'll reach underneath there and grab that wire really nice. This is another one. I went to a water jet cutter a couple towns over and this was his doorstop at his facility. And I said, boy, I'd like that doorstop, and he gave it to me. So I turned it into a nice dolly. See, it'll accommodate these nice round shapes, but I can use this one, I think, on this one. Just bring that over like that. And we're only going to do this little section because we just don't have time. And then there's a pair of vice grips. I've got a couple of them. You modify, you put a little, weld a little tab on here, grind off the teeth, and now you can get this and you can crunch that in really nice. You kind of roll it. If you take your time, you can get that thing to kiss right down there perfectly. So, and that wired edge is super strong and it's safe, meaning that you rub your hand on the inside of the fender, you're not going to get cut or anything. And it just strengthens it up tremendously. So the rest of it would be just more of the same. Bringing it around, and you want to end up with that lip just touching. That's perfection if you have just the right amount. It's about 3/8 of an inch is 375 thousandths, and you probably need like 310 thousandths or so to get the exact right amount. Now it's more than that, probably 330 thousandths. Gives you the exact amount. So now what we're going to do is we want to cut this in half and then we'll mic it up. Alright, we're going to cut it in half right in the middle of the curve here, and then we'll measure it up, and away we go. A quick little story about this saw. I bought this saw in a scrap yard. It was all rusty and motor was missing and it was just in pretty derelict condition, but I thought it had hope because it had a big throat. I didn't know what it was. I actually thought it was a meat saw or something. And I had it for 20 years, sitting outside and covered up and stuff, and it rusted more. The frame is actually cast aluminum. I can't remember the name of them. They sell them under a bunch of Bettmar, B-E-T-T-M-A-R-R, Bettmar. And actually I saw somebody on a forum, one of the shaping forums, said that he had bought this sheet metal saw, and I said, wow, I've got one of those. So I delegated the job to one of my volunteers, Jim from Connecticut, and he made new aluminum shrouds for it. We mounted a new motor in it, and somebody actually gave me 100 foot of the blade stock. It's a 1/4 inch blade, so it didn't cost me anything to restore it pretty much. Put some wheels on it so we can move it around. And this is one of my favorite tools now to cut sheet metal. It's specifically designed to cut sheet metal with a 24-inch throat. If you see one of those at a reasonable price, don't hesitate to buy one. Nice machine. All right, so we cut this apart, and we'll have to take the little burr off. And this is a spot that got the most stretching. Now remember, this started out as 35 thousandths thick. We just want to see what that came down to. So, no burr. Let's see if I can get it with a mic. All right, that's miking up like 28 thousandths. So it lost 7 thousandths of an inch at the most stretched area, which is not much. Now let's measure with this, see if we get a little more accurate. Dial caliper here. Yeah, 28 thousandths, so 28, 29 thousandths. So I lost 6, 7 thousandths or so at the most stretch point. Now I consider this piece finished. Like I said, the next one we'll do is we'll do the same exact size, but we'll make it wider so we won't have to have this welded on section. And I'll show you my shrinking stretching techniques, and we'll just make it out of one piece. So remember, keep spreading the word about our channel. Please subscribe, tell all your friends, please comment. I answer all the comments. And thanks for watching. It's Ray from Proshaper in Charlton, Massachusetts.